Welcome. In front of me is a Samsung Galaxy M15, and today I will show you a couple of tweaks and tricks you can do on this phone. So, to get started, let's open up our settings, and from here we're gonna begin by navigating first to sound and vibration, and scrolling down we'll find sound quality and effects. Just select allow, and here you can find the adapt sound feature. Now this is exclusive to Samsung's as far as I know, and what it allows you to do once enabled, you can tap on the text itself. It'll give you a couple options. Again, we're going to select allow, and by default it's going to default to the under 30 range. Obviously this really depends on your age, which option you want to select right here. And what it tries to achieve, it's basically bringing up the tones that you would of sound that you would lose in terms of hearing over and specific like age ranges. So you probably know that you lose hearing the older you get, and this tries to combat that by making it louder, but not everything obviously. Now this is all fine, it would be already a pretty okay option, but where this option starts to shine is with the last option, which is the add personalized sound profile. Now if you have some kind of earbuds, maybe some cheap ones, these are cheap, but these probably wouldn't really be the kind of like a great example, as these are dual dynamic drivers right there, so they do sound fantastic. But if you have some kind of cheap earbuds that don't really do well in terms of sound reproduction, high like range of sounds specifically, you would probably benefit from setting this up. So what it will do is when you have some kind of earbuds connected or earphones, headphones, anything like that, you do need to have some kind of sound periphery. It won't work with just the speakers on the device. Do want to point that out. But if I try to set it up, you can see that it won't let me. So I need to have something connected to be able to set it up. But once I start to go through this with connected periphery, it will start to play sounds from either left or right side, and all I need to do is select if I can hear it or not. And based on what I will select, it will create a custom tailored equalizer specifically for me. Now this is primarily done to tailor to the user's hearing, but it also would accommodate for instance, crappy headphones or earbuds that can't reproduce some kind of frequencies too well. Obviously, if the earbuds can't produce some frequency well, you probably won't hear it, and therefore you will select that you can't hear it, and the device will boost it up, hopefully overcoming the cheapness of the earbuds and just kind of pushing them a little bit further by making the sound that they couldn't reproduce before, making it louder, and hopefully now being able to reproduce it. So this would, in theory, make your sound quality of your earbuds a little bit better. Though, obviously that might be just preferential, but from my experience, it does make the sound better. So I highly recommend utilizing this. And that being said, once you set it up, it works across the board with everything. So you don't need to like turn it on or off like that or anything like that. It will always work in the background, and once it's set, that's it. Now, anyway, moving on to the next option, we're gonna go into the display, and here we have light and dark mode, and obviously you can choose between those throughout the setup process, but what you don't have throughout the setup process is the dark mode settings, which allows you to select it so it automatically switches between these two modes, either from sunset to sunrise or on a custom timer, so you can have best of both worlds. Now, the best is the fact that you don't get flashbanged by your device during the nighttime if you want to check the time. Continuing a little bit further down, we have the motion smoothness. It is set to high by default, but if you want to prioritize battery life, you could change it to standard, and this might actually give you some better battery life, though not by much, and this will only affect the screen on time only and nothing else. Now moving further down, we have screen mode. This refers to the color of the display. Samsung always puts their devices in vivid mode, and I find it that on Samsungs these are way too overdone. They do be cranking all the sliders all the way to the max, and it just doesn't look good, at least personally for me. Now, luckily, they do have other options like natural, which does tone down the colors to a little bit more reasonable level and makes things like the, for instance, fruits right here look more realistic rather than with the vivid mode making oranges look like they're just glowing, which obviously isn't how they look like in reality. So this is just way too off-putting for me. I prefer to have natural, where everything is more toned down. It might not look as good in scenarios like this one, but I do prefer to have image more toned down than have something that looks better certain times while looking much worse other times. So that would be my go-to option. Now, scrolling a little bit further down, we have things like the edge panel. Now this is, I believe, enabled by default. For some reason it is now turned off, so let me turn it back on. And it adds this panel right here on the side, which you can pull out. And it gives you a bunch of applications. So the 3 here are the ones that will stay visible all the time, while the 3 on the top are most recently used applications. Now, using this, you can actually access other applications, like the entire list of your apps that you have installed, and you can, for instance, open some up. So that's one way. Let's go back and, for instance, do something else by holding it and then dragging it over. We can split screen it. Now, I don't want to drop it because there is also the option to move it to the middle and open it up in a pop-up view like this. Now, additionally, you can tap on this blue bar and, for instance, minimize it, and it creates an app head. You can move it around, and you can have multiple open at the same time and just switch between them. And furthermore, let's do that again. I'm just gonna move it back to split screen like so. So right now I have gallery and YouTube as a split screen option. Now before I do anything, I do want to point out there's nothing visible right here, at least nothing new. But if I just close this, you can see that it appears now in here. Now keep in mind, these are recent apps. So what I can do now is hold it, drag it below, drop it, and it gets added to the applications as a permanent one. So I can just tap on it, and it will automatically open up the 2 applications at the same time, giving me an option to have like app combinations saved and quickly go into them with just a single button press. Now, right now it's kind of not really customized, but I can, for instance, make it smaller, so YouTube, or the other way around. So YouTube would be taking just this spot, right? And I would have to re-add it again for this to be saved like this. But then whenever I open it up, it will always open YouTube in this kind of area right here, while the, for instance, gallery would take most of the screen space. Obviously, very good for maybe not gallery, but for instance, a browser. So I'd recommend utilizing that. Now the panel actually has a little bit more options. So we can click on this pencil right here. So we can add additional applications. There is a limit to, I think, like 24 applications that you can add right here. It kind of becomes 2 columns and scrollable. Now, additionally, furthermore, you can click on the gear icon, and this allows you to add new panels. So these are the ones that come with the device, and most of them are just absolutely useless. I personally tried to use one that seemed the most useful to me, which was weather. But yeah, Samsung doesn't care about this whatsoever. So it's actually much quicker from my experience to literally open up manually the weather application, have it load the info, rather than wait for the weather to load it itself. Because when you add it, let me just go like this. You can now swipe through it. Great, can't load it, whatever. But you'd basically then pull it down and have it load the info. Now that takes much longer than just opening up the weather application. If you don't do that, it just shows you weather from like last day for the most part, which makes it absolutely freaking useless. Now, with that being said, you have also options to download additional ones from the Galaxy Store. But I do want to point out the better ones are paid, which just adds like, it feels like a middle finger from Samsung, to be honest. They're not expensive, but just the fact that you have the option to download more, you just need to pay for it, while you already overpaid for the device, which, let's be honest, when it comes down to Samsung, you're paying mostly for the software and the brand. It's just a Samsung Android. Not really sure why we would be overpaying for something like that. And then the software is something that is like, hey, you want a better experience, pay us more. It just doesn't sit right with me. So I wouldn't recommend supporting this at all. But you know, if you find some kind of panel there that you really, really like, for the most part, I think the most expensive one is like below $2, so it's not like it's egregiously expensive. In any case, let's move on back to the settings page. We have next thing, which is the navigation bar below in the display section. Not sure where it's in the display, but whatever. And here we have the button navigation along with the gesture navigation. I refuse to call it by special name from Samsung. It's gesture navigation. That's how everyone calls it, and that's what it is to me. Now, additionally, when you select one of the options, we have more options in here, which is something that you don't have throughout the setup process. Now, because Samsung is a lazy piece of shit, they decided to remove options rather than fix them. And what I'm referring to is previously on Samsungs, we used to have the option to hide the gesture bar, which is this little thing at the bottom. But because it worked like dog shit, meaning if you had a third-party launcher, which most of us probably do, and you try to hide the gesture bar and swipe up, it most of the time, or about 70% of the time, didn't recognize this as a, for instance, swipe up gesture to go home. It just kind of went stupid mode and decided to do nothing. It's not even like, oh, I'm gonna swipe down. No, it's I'm gonna do nothing. Obviously, not really how it's supposed to work. So Samsung and their billion-dollar company, instead of fixing the problem, their genius wisdom decided to completely remove it. If it sounds like I'm angry about this, it's because I am. So I do wanted to point that out. The only thing that we have left in here is the option to increase or decrease the sensitivity. And again, Samsung in their infinite wisdom used to have two sides of it, left and right. Yeah, no, you don't need that anymore. It's now both. Because why would we devolve resources to a billion-dollar company when we can just do a lazy-ass job? Awesome. Now, moving out of this, let's move on to the last thing that I wanted to show, which is, let's see, is it actually here? Oh, okay, so we have the option by holding the power button. So we can go into side button settings, and in here, actually, it looks like it hides this, or it's not even accessible, which is really good. Let's be honest, no one likes Bixby. But you have the option to, for instance, do a double press function. So by default, it's set to quickly launch camera. For most people, this might be useful. I personally don't take much photos, so I would probably change it to something else. Let's go back to it. I guess we can do it by holding the power button and going back to the settings. So we can have quick open, and we can select what you want to quick open. Now the best option right here, which is not the way it usually was added, we have a flashlight. Now this isn't an application, but it's something that I will be utilizing. So when you select it, it opens up or turns on the flashlight, not open. It is misleading as it says open up. Flashlight isn't necessarily an app, it's a function. So now I can enable flashlight easily, which is, at least for me, a very handy feature as I have more use of the flashlight rather than I have of the camera. So that is something that I would like to enable on my device. And when I was using a Samsung, that's what I was actually using the double press for. But in any case, with that being said, this would conclude the tweaks and the tricks that I want to share with you. So if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.